Hey guys, look what I got. That's right, I got the E-flite Delta Ray 1. This is an RC trainer plane, and the reason I got it is because my sister got it for me for Christmas. And the reason why she got it for me is because it was on my Christmas shopping list. Now, the reason being is I get asked the question all the time, hey GB, what should my first RC plane be? Well, typically I say the Hobbyzone Champ, but that's been out for a while. And there's a lot of new technology coming out to help people to learn how to fly. And that's what's in the box. And coming up next, we're gonna look and see what's going on inside the box. All right, guys, here's a look inside the box at the RC plane. And I'm sure you're noticing that the only thing inside the box is the RC plane. You're probably asking, GB, where is the radio? Where's the battery? Where's the charger? Anything else that I might need? Well, check the link in the description. I am going to have this plane as well as the Ready to Fly kit linked in the description so you can check them out, see what the current pricing is at the time you're watching this video. But I have everything that I need to fly this with a bind and fly basic version. That's what this kit is. So coming up next, we are going to take a closer look at the plane by taking it outside of the box. Okay, so here's a better look at the RC plane. As you can see, the wing shape is that of a triangle, and that is where you get the delta from. And what the delta gives you, it gives you longer flight times, it gives you lots of stability, and in a lot of cases, you can fly delta wings pretty fast. You may be able to do that once you master this. I'm not sure how fast this is yet, but I have a feeling it's not going to be slow, especially if you learn how to fly it right. Very cool. Another thing that is a very cool thing for beginners is we have some dihedral right here. And what dihedral is, you just have some up angle on the wingtip there. And that gives you added stability, and that is going to help you when you learn how to fly an RC plane. Heck, even if you know how to fly an RC plane, dihedral can definitely come in handy. If you look right here, we have a rubber nose tip. Looks like we've got a little groove there, that way you can pop that hatch off. We'll circle back to that a little bit later. I can't really get that off one-handed. And right back here we have the folding prop on the 2S brushless motor, so that is very cool. I'm going to flip this over and we're going to come right back. Here's what we got going on the underside of the RC plane. One of the things that stood out to me the most was it's got 3 skids for landing, or at least 2 skids there, and then a nice big plastic plate right there. That is going to protect you when you belly land this. This obviously does not have any wheels, so when you land in your grass or mud or whatever you land on, I do not recommend landing on pavement with this. I know a lot of people use those plastic skids on other planes like that. I do not, and I will never advocate that. Coming up next, we are going to pop off this plastic plate right there. This plastic piece right there was held on by a pretty strong magnet. Very cool. Pretty easy access to the receiver bay, and that is good because if you're looking to add GPS to this thing, if you're a total beginner, you want to add the virtual fence, all that kind of stuff, that's your plug right there. And then you run the cord up to the front and the nose. In fact, let's see if I can pop this off one-handed. I tried earlier one-handed, didn't work. Boom, there we go, we got it, awesome. And this is not held on by a magnet, which is pretty rare for the battery bays for these UMX planes. It's got kind of a little snap function there. I'm curious to see how this holds up over time. But there we go, and this right here is our plug for your battery. That's what you connect your battery into. And then up here somewhere, you're also supposed to install that GPS module, which is sold separately, and it requires a little bit of programming to get it set up. We're not going to really get into that much more in this video, but coming up next, I am going to bind this to the radio, and we're going to take a look at the basic functions. All right, guys, so I went through and I set things up. It was pretty darn straightforward, to be completely honest. However, if you're a beginner, a straight beginner, which is what this is targeted at. We are going to show you how to use a Spektrum DX6 to set this thing up. I don't have a battery or anything in the plane right now. Literally, we're just going to program the radio because the radio is essentially a computer that you're going to want to program. All right, so this is my Delta Ray. We're going to go to add new model and create new model. Yes. Okay, so that is going to take us to system setup. You want to pay attention to those headings within this radio. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to model type. And it's going to default to airplane, but I literally want to walk you through every step. So we hit that. Data will be reset. Well, we didn't put anything in there specific for this, so resetting is just fine. Okay, we know we're starting clean right there. Very good. Now we want to scroll down to channel assign. So hit that, and you'll see your different, this is a 6-channel radio, and you're going to need a 6-channel radio for this specific plane. And you've got the RX port assignments. Cool. Now we want to go to next. And we want to go to gear, and to switch things, you use this little roller right there. So we find gear, we want to change the button. It says A right now. So we change that to switch rather, not button, B, and confirm that. Okay, cool, that's set. So that makes it so we can change between the different flight modes. There are 3 flight modes. One's beginner, one's intermediate, and one's expert. So I'll show you that a little bit more with the plane once we get that taken care of. So then we slide the thing back up to list. Let's see where we go from there. And then we go to function list. So it's going to take us back to the main screen. And we're back at the main screen, and then we hit this button again. That takes us to function list, and then we want to go to throttle cut. So we go to that, and we're using this the whole time to toggle things around, scroll things around. So go to throttle cut, and then we want to assign the switch to H. So we roll down here to where it says inhibit, hit that button. Scroll here till we hit H. Hit that, and it automatically does that negative 130%. Because if you're scratching your head, you're watching this trying to figure that out, that's what you do. It automatically populates it. So now, when you move the H button, H switch rather, and hit that, zoom in, it will move backward and forward. Now, if you are flying and you hit that switch on accident, it's going to cut your throttle. You're not going to have throttle. So I'm not sure about the value of it. If you put this in your case, the case that I use to transport my radio with, sometimes that gets hit up. So make sure that that is in the down position when you try and fly this. You'll save yourself a lot of trouble. All right, so that is pretty much it. Let me see if there's anything else on here. Okay. Oh, we did miss a step. So let's go back to channel assign. This happens all the time when we're setting up things. At least it does for me. Sometimes I get so excited that I just jump ahead. So we're going to go back to system setup. Yes, we're okay with that because we're not connected to anything. So we want to go back to channel assign. Want to go to next. And see, we got the B set up. We want to go here. And we want to go to the I. Boom. So that makes this I button, the bind button, our auxiliary switch. Okay. So we... All right, so we're pretty much set up and ready to go. Now there are 2 different ways to bind this, and I'm going to come back and show you those next. Like I said before, there are two ways to bind the plane to the radio. The first one is pretty straightforward. You have to make sure that you have the battery plugged in there. I don't have that right now. I will once we're done going over these little basic things. But you want to power that off. You want to make sure that the battery is plugged into that battery plug I showed you earlier in the video. And what you do, first you want to make sure that you're a far enough distance away with the radio from the plane. These ultra micro receivers that I showed you underneath the bottom of the plane, they are very distance sensitive. So if you're too close, it will not bind. So make sure you're at least 5 or 6 feet away from it, and that is setting on a level surface. The safe and the AS3X that are in here, they absolutely have to have a level surface when it's bound. That way it orients itself and makes it effective in flight. If you don't do that, if you're like holding it or doing all sorts of weird stuff, you are going to have problems when you're flying it, and you don't want that. So what you have to do to bind it is turn the switch, hold that down, and it will immediately go into bind mode.
Bind failed.
It failed because we did not have the battery plugged in, so that could not connect. And this radio is pretty darn close to the plane, so that might also be another issue. So okay, we acknowledge that didn't work, so let's go in here, and to get to the other way to bind it, we'll just start from the beginning screen. Hit there, takes us to our function list. Go down to system setup, disconnect any RF. Fine, that's okay, because this radio is not bound to that plane yet, so that is totally fine, not an issue at all. So we scroll down here, and then we find the bind function. And basically, when you hit this, it'll take us to the second screen, and we've got the bind there, so then boom, we hit that.
Bind failed.
And again, it failed because we didn't have a battery plugged into the plane, so the receiver cannot accept that bind signal. All right, coming up next, I am going to show you how to set the dual rates. Okay, so we're back at our starting screen, and we want to hit that, take us to the function list. Right here is our DR and expo. So it says in the manual that we want to set the ailerons and elevator to 70% dual rate and 100% high rate. So basically what that means is the dual rates, they control the amount of range that the control surfaces have. If something is flying and it's overly responsive, it is going to be herky-jerky, not smooth at all, and it's not going to be fun to fly, especially when you're a beginner trying to start out and you really don't have experience handling that. Most people want to do like way too much input, and that's a problem. That can be a really, really big problem, honestly. So there's that. I do also want to touch on expo, since I think this is probably focused, and most of the viewers are absolute noobs, or at least I would assume that. I'm going to cover a lot of things in quite a bit of detail here, so bear with me if you already know what this stuff is. In fact, you can fast forward this if you already know what this stuff is, guys. Don't want to bore you. But expo, you set that. A lot of times, it's actually not called out in the radio or in the manual for this plane, but I'm still going to talk about it. All right, so let's say it's 20%. What that does, that gives you a little more cushion. You see, actually you can see the control there, or the curve. See how it's closer we get to 0, the flatter it is. Now when I go like that, it changes. Basically what that is it makes it soft. So if I go this way, the more expo I add, the softer that input is, so the less herky-jerky the plane's going to be. I think that's the best way I can describe it. Now, the more I take that off, the more sensitive it's going to be to even minor inputs. So that is the value of expo, and even large size scale planes, they come equipped with expo. So it makes it easier to fly them safer and smoother. So that is very important to know, at least I think so. So let's get back to setting the dual rates for the ailerons and elevator. So I always set my F switch as my aileron. So let's go down here to switch, kind of like what we did earlier, cycling through. Let's find our F. Boom. Okay, cool. Now this switch is in the down position, and that is important when you're setting your dual rates. So let's go down here. Okay, cool. So we've got that switch right here. All right. And you'll notice that it changes. Goes to 100. That's high rates. Dual rates are on, 70%. So, and you just do it. Simple flip of a switch. Now, before you fly your plane, make sure you know where your dual rates are set, because that is extremely important. All right, so now we've got one more step to do here. Let's go to our elevator. All right, select that. And I always use my C switch for my elevator. So let's go down here, assign the C switch. Okay, let's go up there. Now this is in the down position, so I'm just going to add 70, or select that, scroll down to 70. Select that, nice and simple. Now, to get it into high rates, flip that up, boom. We have our dual rates set. Coming up next, I'm actually gonna live bind this radio to the plane. So that's coming up next. All right, guys, so we are going to plug in the battery. So we plug that in. You'll hear the ESC make that beeping sound. Now, let me get back in front of the camera. So now we are going to bind it like so.
Binding. DSMX 22 milliseconds.
Perfect.
Bind complete.
We have it bound. And you'll hear that, or see those control surfaces moving and hear that beep. You have to wait for that final beep initialization to know that it is bound up and ready to go. All right, so that is cool. Let's get this thing, let's get the show on the road actually. I'm gonna go over a couple things right here. Put that thing right there. All right, so first off, we are gonna do a motor test. Let me see how I'm gonna do this. You do not want to hold this plane by the wingtip. This foam is actually really nice, heavy-duty foam. I really like this durable design. That is fantastic. I'm actually really amazed. Most of the E-flite ultra micro planes, UMX planes, are made of horribly pathetic foam, super fragile. This is made of the type of foam that you'd get in a much bigger, more expensive RC plane. So that is very good. All right, so let me, yeah, here we go. Let's do just a quick little motor test. All right, we ran that up to probably about 80%. So this thing is probably gonna scoot. That's cool. All right, so we have this in the first flight mode right now, and we've got our B switch all the way forward. So I'm gonna demonstrate right here. So when you try and turn, you notice that the aileron, or elevon, goes up and then the other one goes down. So what that does is it tries to level this out. Same thing if you go forward, you notice the control surface goes up. Now, we switch to the second switch, the middle switch on the B switch, and it does that too, just a little bit less of a lesser degree, gives you a little bit more range of motion to have a little more fun. You still can't do a lot of stuff with that, but it's not quite as limiting. Especially, that is particularly helpful if you're flying in a pretty small space. If you're flying in a small space, you probably want to go to a bigger space if you're flying it on that initial switch, because it's not going to turn very sharp, all that stuff, especially if you're running at the low rates, 70% dual rates. So keep that in mind, guys. And please ask me any questions in the comments section if I'm going too fast or missing anything, because I want to be helpful. Now, if we go into the expert mode, the lowest switch, the third switch, that doesn't do that. It doesn't correct it. It does some correction. That's the AS3X kind of smoothing out the flight path. But as far as actually controlling what it can do, this thing will do rolls, it will do loops, all that stuff. And that, of course, if you're not an experienced flyer, they call it expert mode for a reason. You're likely to crash it, and you don't want to crash it, even though this thing is pretty durable. Even the rudder actually is pretty durable. I don't recommend holding it by the rudder, but almost no UMX planes, ultramicro planes that I have bought, would I ever consider holding by the rudder. So this thing is really well built, guys. Oh, and one thing I did not mention earlier that I should have when I watched the footage back, I called out, we've got our skid plate here, skid plate up here, and then, you know, our three things here. Well, there's a fourth, and it's a big one. Bottom of the motor mount where that connects, that is a huge, that's the biggest skid that we've got on this plane. So wanted to call that out. That is a good thing. One other thing that I missed too. Let's see, pop this thing off. For those of you that want to do FPV with this long term, short term I don't recommend it. Make sure you learn how to fly it, get comfortable with it. But if you're wanting to do FPV, that is where you plug in your FPV. It's got a built-in OSD. As long as you use the recommended camera equipment or something similar, you will have an OSD. What an OSD is, that will tell you your battery voltage. It will tell you a bunch of stuff. I can't remember exactly what it is, but basically the biggest value of an OSD for FPV is giving you real-time feedback information about your RC plane. The voltage is the biggest one, because if you see your voltage is low, you're going to want to land that thing. But if you see that it's still high, you get to fly and have a lot more fun. So there you go. Coming up next, we're going to do our pros and cons. All right, guys, so before we get into the pros and cons, I do want to talk about center of gravity. That is critical for new people to understand how that works and how to measure for it. So with this plane, in the manual, it calls out right here. You want to measure from that little corner, that little indentation, 60 to 68 millimeters back. In fact, you probably want to do it from the underside because it's level here on the underside. So that takes you right about here. And the way to measure it is make sure your battery's in the battery bay. And let's go to that side, because when I flip it over, be like so. And before I shot this clip, I got mine nice and pretty much where I want it to be. One thing to keep in mind is you do not want the weight to shift backwards. That's called tail heavy. You do not want that, especially with a flying wing, a delta wing like this. It's nothing but trouble. If anything, you want it to be a touch nose heavy, nothing crazy, but a touch nose heavy that will give you more control. If it's too nose heavy, you're not going to be able to pull the nose up. But if you have to choose one evil or the other, you're going to want to pick nose heavy. All right, coming up next, we are going to do our pros and cons. All right, guys, we're going to do our pros and cons here. As far as the pros go, this thing already comes pre-built inside the box. All you have to do is bind it to your radio, and the ready to fly one, it already comes pre-bound with your radio. All you need to do is charge your battery. That's it. Well, and read up on the manual. That's pretty important. Another huge thing is that this thing can be upgraded to Safe Plus GPS drone technology that can do Autoland, virtual fence, holding pattern. Of course, that is sold separately. And as your skills improve, this plane will grow with you. That is a huge pro, guys. You can start out with the beginner. As you get comfortable with that, go to the intermediate. And as you get comfortable with that, just take the training wheels off and let it rip in expert mode. Rolls, loops, fast low passes, all that fun stuff. I cannot wait to fly this thing, guys. I really can't. Another big thing is that it's FPV ready. with OSD. OSD is awesome. Tells you your flight time, battery voltage, all sorts of great stuff. And once you get deeper into the hobby and learn how to fly, riding on board your plane is so much fun. Oh my gosh. Check out some of my FPV videos, guys. I think you'll get an idea of what that's all about. All right, another huge thing is that just like all other E-flite RC planes, the micros anyway, it comes with a nice box. Do not throw that box away. It is a great storage and transport tool. Do not throw that box away. You will regret it if you do. As far as the cons go, some of the pros are actually cons. And the reason being is that you've got to do a lot of setup and some other things that might be overwhelming for a noob, someone who's brand new to the hobby. So if you are brand new to the hobby, reach out to Horizon Hobby for their technical support and ask questions, comments below this video rather. I will do my best to help. And if you guys really want me to add like the GPS and stuff to this plane, let me know. If you really want me to, I will take the time and expense to do that probably. So definitely speak up in the comments if that's what you're looking for. And overall, this is a very cool RC trainer plane. I cannot wait to test it outside. And like, comment, and subscribe. And GB Linden out.